Hey everybody, this is Michael Tucker, the founder of The Funnel Pros and the host of the Daily Gems podcast. And in today's episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, I'm going to share how the power of virtual events can take your message and your mission to another level, but also going to talk about how there's power in stepping back so you can step forward and launch forward bigger, better, and faster. So let's dive into today's show.
And hello, fabulous person. BeateChelette here. I am the host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and I want to welcome you to today's episode where we discuss how to navigate strategy and spirituality to achieve time and financial freedom. Truly successful people have learned how to master both, a clear intention and a strategy to execute that in a spiritual practice that will help them to stay in alignment and on purpose. Please enjoy the show and listen to what our guest today has to say about this very topic. Today's guest on the show is Michael Tucker. Michael Tucker is the CEO of Funnel Pros, and in everybody's book, Michael, you probably are the most strategic person I would ever have on my team. It's about click-through rates, open rates, show-up rates. I mean, it is so by the book of what makes a lot of people really nervous or gives them heart palpitations, so to speak. So I'm excited to have you on the show because you also have another component about you that is the spiritual aspect of it, which we'll be diving in, which will surprise a lot of people. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I know this is going to be a great convo. Prior our first meeting together, I know we went super deep into conversation. We went over our time, I believe, but it was amazing just to sit down and talk with somebody who's like-minded. So let's just jump right on into it.
Excellent. So tell us what you do, what do you solve for your clients, and who are you?
Yeah, my name is Michael Tucker, and I've been in the virtual event and digital marketing space for about 5 to 6 years now. Our company, The Funnel Pros, we primarily help entrepreneurs, specifically online entrepreneurs, scale their message and their influence through virtual events. So I know you love virtual events as well. We've talked about that in the past. So our primary goal is just helping entrepreneurs get their message out into the world faster and further through virtual events. And so, if I could, sum it up in 60 seconds, that's what I would say. I truly believe that we all have a mission. We all have a message on our heart. And one of the best ways in this digital age and in this AI age, which we're not going to get into AI today, but the best thing to get your message out there is virtual events. I truly believe that. So I'm excited to dive into it and see where this conversation goes.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for that. So the first question, obviously, is the question about strategy. So clearly the strategy that you've chosen as a digital marketer is virtual events. Why this?
I love virtual events because there's not any other vehicle that I feel like, other than in-person events, which is a whole nother beast to run, as you and I both know. Virtual events are one of the best ways to build relationships with people. Why? Because from the comfort of their home, you can build authentic, deep relationships and build more trust than any other strategy I know of, right? And so, people can go download an ebook, they can go and opt into a newsletter, but when you can sit down and you can speak words and you can speak life into people virtually through a screen like we're doing now, it can create a whole new level of trust, which ultimately can lead to a whole new level of purchasing. So that's why I love virtual events, is because when I first started, I was working with a mentor, and I won't get too deep into my story, but when I first started digital marketing, I was helping a friend with his digital marketing, and he was just starting out, and we started using these virtual events. And although they were small, which it doesn't always matter about the size of the room, I would rather have quality people than a bunch of people that, didn't need to be in the room. But we had small rooms of quality people, and we were able to scale his business and help a lot of people change their life. And so that's why I love it. It's just because of the rapport you can build and the impact you can make all from your home and from your office.
You already just mentioned something that I think a lot of people get completely stuck up. So if we're really honest here and we look at the events of whatever Brendon Burchard or Grant Cardone or Ryan Deiss or whatever that is, and there's hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of people in there. Now I'm trying to do a virtual event, 5, 10 people, 20 people. And I think what if this is not successful? But you telling me so it may not be the case. So talk to me about quantity versus quality in these types of events. What are you looking for?
Yeah, great question. And so for me, I'm looking for the targeted people, my ideal clients to be in the room. And so I've had instances myself. For example, about a year ago, I ran an event myself. I never run events for myself, by the way. I'm one of those guys, I'll run events for everybody else but myself. And one day I said, you know what? I just need to do it. I haven't done an event for myself in years. Let's do it. So I don't have a big audience, by the way. I don't have a massive list because I've helped other people build their list and their audiences, and I've just been in the background. And so I ran this event. I think it had 50 people show up or register for this free event. And then I had about 10 to 15 people actually show up, consistently out of the 40 or 50 people that registered. And through that event, that was one of those like light bulb moments for me. I showed up every day with passion. I showed every day sharing what was on my heart, the message I had in my business. And we actually ended up closing several sales and made over $40,000 through one event with only 10 to 15 people showing up every day. And so whenever I tell people, it's more about the quality versus the quantity, but it's also about your passion and your belief that you hold whenever it comes to sharing your message and your mission, because 10 people can be in the room, your targeted audience, right? The people that you want to buy your product, that need your product, can be in the room. But if you don't share it effectively, your message and your product, you don't share it effectively, then, ultimately they may not buy. And so for me, that was a light bulb moment, because I came in, I was like, hey, 10 or 15 people here, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to go out, I'm going to play big. And it paid off. And so for me, I'm looking for people who need what I have, people who want what I have. But then also at the same time, I'm looking inside and saying, hey, do I truly believe what I'm about to talk about? Do I truly believe in my product and service? And then I share that passionately with those in my care. Because listen, the worst thing that can happen is you get better at your speaking skills if you're doing it right. If you're looking at your daily session, your trainings, your virtual event after, and you're criticizing yourself positively, you're breaking down analytically what you're doing. The worst case scenario is you just get better speaking. You get better at your pitching. You maybe build a few fans, a few followers, right? And so that's why I love that concept of quality over quantity. But it always helps when you have both.
It certainly does. What comes to mind as you just shared that, Michael, was that I heard somebody say, and this was relating to a podcast, and he had said, if you have 20 people that listen to your podcast and you go like, oh gosh, 20 people is like nothing. But then if you had an event at the local Chamber of Commerce and there would be 20 people there every week, would you look at this differently? So that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, is that I need to make almost a personal assessment here and saying, where would I show up if I had 50 people or 15 people consistently, and I'd consider this a success. So why do I judge this over something else? So is there a psychology behind this that you also help your clients to dive in and understand, so they don't walk around feeling like losers? And I put this in quotation marks here, because they don't have these large numbers that we used from the big internet marketers?
Yeah, I would one thing that I always talk about is exactly what you said, is when you compare it to, and you play the comparison game in a good way, and you just imagine, because I actually have had in the past a few clients that look at me like, Michael, I don't want to show up for 100 people. I'm like, imagine if there was 100 people in person, like that would be a pretty decent meetup, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's what you just did. You just impacted. So I love that when you look at it from that perspective, it always changes something. Sometimes you just have to step back. But then, what I tell my clients as well is that the thing with marketing, the things with the sales and business, is you're always having to learn, test, tweak, repeat. You're always having to learn something new, test it out, go back and tweak it and make changes, and then repeat the process, learn something new, implement. And so whenever you look at it through that frame and you're saying, okay, this event, yes, it only may have been 10, 15, 20 people. What can I do next time to get it to 30, to 40, to 50, to 100? And so I look at it as more of a growth mindset, and look at it as, number one, I need to take care of the people that are in my care right now, because although they're only maybe 10 or 15 people, they're still people who are trusting me, who are believing in me for my message, right? So don't discount that. You still have people in your care you need to deliver to, you need to take action for. But then on the other side is, hey, how can this be the foundation? And how can we use this as the beginning of something great? And so I'm not going to say there's a magical pill that you have to swallow. I'm just going to say, hey, it's all about the mindset and the perspective. So quit being, this is going to sound really bad, okay? Quit being, okay, whenever I say, because sometimes I say this, people be like, Michael, that's harsh. Quit being selfish, because that's what it comes from. A lot of times with people, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to waste my time. I get it. But there's people here who need you. So let's show up and serve. That's what we do through virtual events. We serve people. And once you serve people with the right amount of passion, the right amount of energy, enthusiasm,
will show up.
See that.
Yeah,
they'll see that, and it'll spread. So that's just a few things I tell my clients.
I love that very, very much. And I actually love the idea that you call it being selfish, because I think that's exactly what it is. It is our own perception that is in the way of us achieving the greatness. Because if I was in a room of 5 highly qualified, vetted prospects, and I'd be at the local restaurant in a back room, I'd be super happy. So why can't I not have that same happiness exude into the people that are here and that are showing up? And in my personal world, from my spiritual mindset for that is that I always say, let me find the right words for the people that are here. And Martin Luther King said, be the best street sweeper if you are a street sweeper. And I think we have to also be very cognizant of how we are going to show up for the people that are here, because if you cannot do this well, you're not going to be able to do anything well.
Right. And one thing, you actually mentioned Brandon Bouchard, who's a speaker, an author. You guys, if you don't know who he is, look him up. And I'm actually pretty positive, and I need to go back on my Facebook because this is just a memory that popped up. He shared a post one day in a hotel lobby. Okay, you guys know hotel lobbies, oftentimes very big. And he was sharing how he went and walked through the hotel lobby, found a conference room where he was hosting one of his first meetups. Okay. Now this is in person, and he was hosting his very first meetup, walking through the lobby, went in, sat down in his conference room that he rented out for a few $100s, thinking he was going to have an amazing show out. And he sat there and no one showed up. And so there's this picture of Brandon sitting in an empty conference room, literally empty. There's a picture of him sitting against the wall in a chair with some books in his lap. He's thinking that all these people are going to show up and nobody showed up. But then in the same post, he talked about the power of consistency and how not more than 10 years later in that same hotel, let me say this, not a different hotel, the same exact hotel he rented out for his very first meetup, he was on stage speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people. There's power in consistency. You have to start somewhere. You have to start where you are now. And if it's making a podcast for 20 people listening, if it's running a webinar for 20 people watching, do it well.
I love that.
And if you can do it well, listen, I'm a Christian. I truly believe if you take responsibility for what you're given now, what's in your hands at this moment, and you steward it well, you will have great rewards in the future.
I love that. And we're going to dive into this as we're now moving over to the more spiritual or mindset portion of the show. So we will be right back. Have you ever wondered what the actual amount of your true earning potential is in this market? To find out what your talent is worth, take our quiz at whatsyourtalentworth.com. You will find out your actual earning potential amount by using our proprietary profit formula. Enjoy the quiz, and again, the URL is whatsyourtalentworth.com. Michael, what I really like about what you just said, and you had already sort of preceded this portion of the show when you said, you have to have the right mindset to, when you do a virtual event, to do it for the people, to not do it for yourself. What role does your spirituality play in how you approach the strategy?
Yeah, great question. Well, one, my faith, is embedded in everything I do. So I'm not going to say, let me say it this way. I try to embed it in everything I do. There's times I fail, but I will say this. A lot of times it affects in a positive way how I make decisions. And, a lot of times, let me say this, you and I were talking prior to the show, and we had this conversation on spirituality. And I told you guys how in my life right now, one big way it's showing up is in the decisions I make inside and outside my business. Now, I know that's not specifically on strategy, but it is a strategy for me because decision making is very key for me. And so right now, the decision making is, do I put in the work or do I not? Do I show up and serve this client or do I not? Do I show up and do I, deliver for this individual at this moment in time, or do I need to wait until the future? And, for a season, like many entrepreneurs, I have ran and I have ran and I have ran the wheels off, running 14, 16, 18-hour days sometimes. And so for me at this moment in time, it's like strategy is amazing, right? Strategy is cool. We have the KPIs, we have all these things, but sometimes you need to step back to step forward. And so for me right now, the way spirituality and my faith has been leading me in my business and strategy is it's taken more of the forefront, more of the driver's seat. And right now it's kind of putting me in reverse a little bit, not in a bad way, but more of a way of like, hey, Michael, let's be a little bit more strategic. You've been running for so long. Let's find a way to relax. So let's find a way to prepare for the future so that when it is launch time, you'll be in a better position. So I don't know if that answered your question entirely. I have so many thoughts up here. You're asking such great questions. I feel like I can just talk and talk and talk. So
what's the whole point of the podcast?
I will if you let me. This may turn into an hour and a half. But, I would love to hear from you, B, because I know you're in here. You're in here all the time, conversing with other business owners. How is it integrated into your life, and what effect does it have on your life?
I think that the biggest turning point for me was when I did my ayahuasca journey at the beginning of the year. And I've talked about this a little bit, but it kicked my butt. I mean, I was head first back into some real heavy childhood trauma that I just completely eliminated from my memory. And I remember things now that I really had no desire to remember. But what I always had felt is that there was something that sort of was a blockage. There's a part of me that I couldn't access. There was, maybe relating to other people or fully surrendering, even in a relationship or in intimacy or whatever you may want to call it, right? And then you go like, this has nothing to do with business. But then you realize that the way you show up is the way you show up. So, and you realize sometimes you go in a room and then and you go, I really, this person gives me a strange vibe, but I immediately have a dislike or my alarm goes off. So I got triggered. And so I looked into this from the perspective of, and that's why we're bringing spirituality in it, because we are so often in our trauma trigger response that it's a smell, it's a sound, it's somebody says something to you and it reminds you of what dad, mom didn't do, the coach, the person that meant well, but demoralized you. And then we're in this constant trauma response, but we're never really in charge. And that's, I think, the part about spirituality or spiritual principles or mindset, energy, God, people can call it whatever they want. But I do believe that we are now at a moment in business where we're seeing a massive transformation. It's not just about money anymore. And it's not just about business anymore. Because if you can enjoy your family, you can enjoy yourself, you can enjoy the ride, how good is it? And that's why I changed the show to include that, because I heard it everywhere. And I'm like, well, maybe I should pay attention to it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really cool, even though it took you years to have some of these epiphanies, it's really cool that even though these were things that maybe you forgot about, or maybe that, you buried in the past, that now that it's been brought to light, you're okay with sharing it. That's what I think is kind of cool. Like it may not feel good at the moment sharing some of those things outside, but I just want to say thank you for being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to share that, because listen, a lot of times we all face these failures in business. I'm going to be honest, the biggest entrepreneurs you see online, whether it is Grant Cardone, whether it's, all these individuals are going through something that you would not believe. Lawsuits, bankruptcy, and other businesses that you don't know about. They're dealing with stuff behind the curtain And there's a lot of trauma that comes with just business in general. I've had many businesses in the past that have failed, that have left me scarred, that have left me scared, that have left me bruised. But I want you to know, if you're listening to this today and you're watching this show, you're not alone. We've all experienced it. It's normal to scrape your knees. It's normal to bump your head. What is not normal, I'll say this, is, well, I keep wanting to make super bold statements, and I don't know how your audience will say
No,
some
no,
of this.
no,
And
no,
so
don't do. I mean, certainly not known for be humble
sometimes I'm a
or
little
holding
blunt. But let
anything
me say
back.
this: it's okay to bump your head. It's okay, but listen, what I want you all to do is just ask, how can I get past those, and how can I keep pushing forward? And that seems so basic, it's so simple, but I promise you, even when you feeling the pain now, even when you're dealing with the trauma or maybe the setbacks that those situations have on your life, you can still keep doing business. You don't have to give up. You can keep working on the strategies that worked at one time. You can keep learning and growing. And so I think for me, going into new seasons after I've dealt with some of those things in business where I've had failures and I've had mishaps and all these things, spirituality was one of those things, and my faith was one of those things that kept me grounded and kept me moving forward, knowing that it's going to be okay and there's someone who's got me, right? And so that's for me, another way that spirituality has helped me is overcome those deep, dark moments when I feel like, how the heck am I going to get out of this? So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other people that can relate. So that's just one thing I wanted to share.
Did you always have the spiritual aspect, or was this something that was there and then went away and came back?
Great question. Fortunately, I was blessed to grow up in a household that cultivated that. Unfortunately, not everybody does. But for me, I was very, very much so embedded in how the culture of our family. I will say there's not always been times in my life where it was all hunky dory, and that was, the foundation of what I did and, who I was. There was times when I did veer off the tracks of life. But what I'll say is that it was something that I've always been grounded in, or I could say this, something I always found myself going back to. But I think regardless of your situation, I'd say regardless of whether you grew up in a family like mine where, spirituality and faith was embedded into it, or not, that it's definitely something that we should all look forward to and look into. I should say look into, because business and spirituality definitely go hand in hand. Business and faith definitely go hand in hand. And you're living proof. You're talking about it. You're teaching it. You have other people teaching about it. So why not dive into that and come back to it if you veered off the tracks like I have at times.
Well, I've certainly been off the track for a while. I mean, I think for me, the biggest part was after I sold my business, and I had a lot of spiritual practice before, and then I sold my business. And for some reason, I thought I don't need it anymore because I had achieved a certain level of success. And then I fell off, and I hit some bumpy times in the days since. And you go like, well, but why? So here I am. I sold the business to Bill Gates. I have millions in the bank. Why am I still feeling that way? And I think you eventually realize that we cannot be separated from what goes on around us because we all connected, and we all connected to one source. And when you step into that and you realize that we have to constantly keep our mindset, keep it clean. How do you practice clean thinking, which is my next question to you. What's your spiritual practice? How do you practice clean thinking? And do you practice clean thinking?
Yeah, I think it depends on what clean thinking is defined as for each individual.
You get to define it for yourself.
And that's where I was going to go. I was going to say for me, it's really being intentional, going back to the unplugging. For me, practicing a lot of time away from the business. For me, I used to not do that, but now setting boundaries. There's a great book by Trent Shelton. I don't know if you guys know who Trent Shelton is. He's a motivational speaker. In spirituality and business would be a great, book to dive into. And he has a book. What I was getting to is called "Protect Your Peace." And in this book, he talks about setting boundaries and how in business and in life it can get crazy. People pulling you all different directions. And so for me, how I have to create that clean mindset has been setting boundaries and telling people no, putting my phone on do not disturb, and being okay if people think differently because I had to do those things. And so that's one thing. Second thing is finding ways to proactively serve, right? And so although business should be service, a lot of times, like I mentioned earlier, it often times becomes a selfish mindset of how can I put out marketing that's going to get me X amount of leads or X amount of sales, or how can I run an event that's going to produce this results for me, my business, my employees. So finding ways to proactively go out and serve other people changes the perspective we were talking about earlier, right? Changes the mindset. And so there's many different things I could say. Prayer for me is something that I always turn to: prayer, serving, reflection. And I will say reading books like the one from Trent Shelton is one that I love. So there's many different things, but those are just a few.
I love that very, very much. And I will testify to that, because when we first spoke, I was looking for somebody to help me with some of the digital portions of it. And you immediately said boundaries. And you said, well, before I say anything, I need you to do this. And why don't we have the show first, so we see if we even like each other? And I thought that was perfectly okay with me, because I believe that there are steps in how we evaluate collaborations. And especially in the age of bad LinkedIn pitches, I don't know how many you get a day, but I get about 20. And I call them the "are you always showing up on a first date naked" pitches, where
I've never heard of that before.
but it's
I
like
may
that,
use that in the future, by the way.
right? They just walk into the room, they're butt naked, and they say, "Hey, how's it sound?" And you go like, "Sound what?" You don't know them. They've never spoken to them before. And here they are, and they're ready for some sort of adventure that you clearly have no idea about. So I,
And sometimes, I don't want people to think, like, a lot of times saying no, and this is something I'm still working on, by the way. I'm not perfect at, I'm not claiming to be perfect at. What I'll say is this is whenever you can learn to say no, or you can learn to put, things ahead, similar to what our conversation was earlier. Previously you said, hey, I need help with digital marketing. I would love to have your team's help. And, it wasn't a no. It was a maybe, right? It was a maybe.
it was a
And it
definite
was like,
maybe.
hey, let's explore and build a deeper relationship.
Yeah,
So when you can learn to say no, or learn to set some kind of pre-qualifications up for your business or things of that nature, it actually opens you up for more, to spend that time and energy
yes.
in other areas that may produce more results. And so unfortunately, there are times when people come to me and they're like, Michael, I will pay you X amount of dollars. I would love to have you work. Awesome. Cool. But are we going to be a good fit? Are you going to provide good energy for my team? Somebody can pay me $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, but if they're going to be the worst client in the world, they're going to be calling me at midnight, 2:00, 3:00 in the morning. Do I want them as a client? Some people say, yeah, I want the money. Let me take it. I promise you, later on, you'll be dreading it. You'll be feeling horrible. You'll be tired. You'll be wishing you hadn't. So for me, there's just power in, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say not yet. It's okay to say maybe later. And so, not saying in this situation B that we will never work together. I'm just saying that was a thing where you and I can sit down and say, okay, let's build a relationship first.
Exactly.
Let's actually communicate. And yes, it takes time. It's more work, but I'd rather have more work on the front end than on the back end. And so that's one philosophy and one mindset that I have.
I'm totally on board with that. I believe that the more we distance ourselves from the I need the money right now, I'll do anything for the money, to saying, does this feel right? Is this the right fit? Can I serve this person? Does it make me happy? Will it serve my people? The more we'll start to attract the right people. And once you start going down that road, stuff breaks. Things are falling away. People leave. Computers break. Stuff goes by the wayside, because you're being prepared for whatever this next level of your career is. So, Michael, for somebody who's now heard about what you do and wants to find out if they are a good fit for your company, where should we send them?
Yeah, you can go to thefunnelpros.com. You can go there, book a time to chat with me. I'll tell you whether or not you're a good fit. I may tell you no. I may tell you maybe later. I may tell you, yes, I think you're a good fit. But the conversation we'll have is one that I hope you walk away with finding valuable. It's a no pitch conversation where you and I can sit down and have a virtual coffee. We talk about how virtual events can help your business. I can maybe talk to you about how you could work with us, or if you're not a good fit, I can maybe give you some advice on things I would implement in your business if I was you, so you can at least taking away some kind of action and with some kind of win. So that's thefunnelpros.com, complimentary call with myself, not somebody on my team, with myself, and we can sit down and have a 15-minute convo.
I love that. And anywhere on social media where they can read up a little bit about some of your philosophies?
Yeah. You can go to official Michael Tucker on Instagram. I'm most active there. Do have a YouTube, but just go to Instagram. Just hit me up, official Michael Tucker. Just shoot me a DM. Let me know. Say, hey, I came from B's show. I was listening to the conversation, and I would love to go ahead and send a screenshot over to B and let her know that people are coming in.
Wonderful. I love that.
Yeah. So I always love when people that I have on my podcast do the same. So yeah, go ahead and shoot me a message. Let me know.
Yeah. And tell us about your podcast. So let's not leave that resource untapped.
Yeah, no, we have a podcast kind of similar to this, but different. We have a daily podcast that goes out every morning at 5 a.m. They're 10-minute shows. They're not super long. They're 5 to 10 minutes, and they are mindset and inspirational talks for business owners. So it's called the Daily Gems Podcast. So every morning I just drop a quick word. It's could be on, how to overcome setbacks. It could be on the power of leading your team well. It could be on multiple topics, but every morning, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m., we drop a show on the Daily Gem Podcast, because I seen the same thing you were seeing, B. I was like, all these people have strategy, but what about those that need help?
Internal help, yes.
What if they need help in other areas?
Yes.
And so I like just listening to quick, combos, on my way to work. So I was like, hey, why not provide that for other people? But listen, if you guys are here listening to this show, she did not ask me to do this. To say thank you to the host for putting these on. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort to host a podcast. I know, because I've done it over and over and over again. So do be a favor, comment, leave a review, let her know how awesome she is. Subscribe. She did not tell me to do this, but subscribe if possible. Share it with a friend if possible, because you need to reward her for the labor she's putting into this. If you found value in this show, if you find value in the past shows, go ahead, show her some love and do that for her. I'm sure she would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I appreciate you very much. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was an awesome conversation about strategy and spirituality, coming from someone who we think is like all over KPIs and dashboards, even more profound. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And again, if I can ever serve you and your audience, just let me know. You got my email, you got my phone number. Hit me up. Maybe we can do this again in the future sometime.
That sounds amazing. And that's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show. Until next time, and goodbye. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, a comment, and share this episode with one more person so that you can help us help more people. Thank you again. Until next time. Goodbye.